I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to stand up there and say, you know what? I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of my life being so affected from injuries these past 4 years that I just want to live my life without these injuries and without this rehab cycle and this pain. Earlier this evening, Andrew Luck shocked the sports world by announcing his abrupt retirement from the NFL at just 29 years old. We, of course, have seen him fighting a lot of injuries recent, and this was really the primary reason for his retirement, just getting stuck in this perpetual injury rehab cycle for the past 4 years. Welcome back, everybody, to your number one stop for everything sports injury and sports medicine related. In the video today, we're going to take a look back on just everything that Andrew Luck has had to go through in his relatively young career. My first reaction when I saw the news was absolute shock, like everyone else, and my thought was, how in the world could he do this? Why would he want to do this? But after I thought back to all the injuries he's had and everything he's had to deal with, and then the symptoms that come along with those particular injuries, it actually isn't too surprising. And so I hope that this video just serves as a little bit more evidence as to why we maybe can't blame someone like Luck for really just wanting to step away from football and get back to a life that doesn't involve injuries and rehab year after year. What we'll do is we'll walk through the kind of injury timeline that he's had ever since his initial shoulder injuries developed back in 2015. We got some additional info on his recent ankle injury that we'll address here at the end as well, but hopefully this is just kind of a brief look at really all the miserable stuff he's had to deal with. I don't necessarily think we should feel sorry for him, but I think it's important to understand just everything he's been through and what all has led up to this big of a decision. It's easy to forget about how these injuries can affect the person outside of the field. And clearly this is an example where sometimes that is just such a significant impact on your life that it really takes its toll and you have to step away from it. We found out after the fact that it was really week 3 of the 2015 season against the Tennessee Titans where Luck really first had the initiation of all these shoulder problems. The concern then developed for, in particular, a labrum injury in that throwing arm. So let's talk briefly about the labrum and what types of symptoms and what this would have been like for Luck to experience. Your shoulder joint is made up of the humerus and the glenoid, which is part of your scapula. But the shoulder joint is really sort of like a ball on a tee. Unlike your hip joint, which is a big socket and a ball inside that socket, your shoulder joint's different in that it really is like a golf ball sitting on a small little tee. There's not some big deep socket that the shoulder sits inside, and so you rely on these surrounding muscles and the surrounding cartilage to help keep your shoulder in place and sustain forces. The labrum is the rim of cartilage that goes around the glenoid and helps to provide some additional support and structure to that humeral head sitting inside that joint. You then have your rotator cuff muscles, which provide additional support and stability to the shoulder to try to help keep all the mechanics in line. What happens in the case of a shoulder dislocation or partial subluxation is the ball of that humeral head gets pushed and grinds up against the labrum. This can cause that labrum to tear, and once that labrum tears, you can get a lot of really bothersome symptoms, especially for someone who relies on throwing. Pain is, of course, a given in these situations, but the biggest thing that a quarterback would really notice is the instability. When that lining around the glenoid is impaired with the labrum, your shoulder joint is not as stable. And so anytime you're doing any extreme motion, in particular, bringing your arm back to throw, that puts added stress on that joint and makes the shoulder just feel really, really unstable. It essentially feels like your shoulder is going to pop out every time you go to move it and every time you throw it. Similarly, in these cases, people can have really severe pain, not just in the shoulder, but going down the entirety of the arm. You think about this for an athlete, of course, it's going to make it hard to throw, but it also impacts your daily activities. It makes it hard to hold on to objects. It makes it hard to brush your hair, to brush your teeth. Doing all these basic activities that require you to do things up over your head and behind your head are bothered and affected when you have a labral injury. Now, in this whole timeline, Luck was able to come back, but then later on in that season, he suffered a kidney laceration and tears to his abdominal muscles. I don't care who you are, that's going to be absolutely terrifying to go through. At the same time, he's got torn cartilage in his ribs, and so now he's having pain in his shoulder. He's having pain when he tries to cough, take a deep breath, and just do normal stuff. And one of his kidneys got hit so hard that he started peeing blood. Now, in the 2016 season, Luck only missed 1 game due to injury, but was still dealing with this just debilitating kind of lingering shoulder pain, all stemming from that initial injury. There was also a report that he had an AC injury whenever he was out snowboarding. And so, again, another season of just trying to rehab, trying to get through something. In January of 2017, he finally underwent surgery to repair the labrum after just not being able to make it with the rehab program. Just the biomechanical nature of the labrum in the shoulder joint make it a really challenging thing to try to fix surgically. Oftentimes we try to avoid doing surgery at all costs because we know that surgery can be really hard and isn't always going to provide 100% of an outcome. After surgery, you have to almost relearn how to throw, and so you have to relearn how to coordinate all these muscles in your body. And so it's like starting over from scratch almost to try to avoid pain and symptoms from coming back. Now fast forward finally to the spring of this year, the shoulder seems to be doing well. He's ready to hit the ground running for a good full season, and now he suffers a calf strain. All right, typically pretty minor thing. He rehabs the calf, but now he's developing more pain in his ankle. The ankle injury was a big sort of unknown, and he shed some additional light on it at this press conference, saying that it was a combination of the calf strain, posterior impingement, and a high ankle sprain. And all three of these things fit with sort of the symptoms he'd be having. The calf strain, of course, from the muscle up in the gastrocnemius that was going on before. And if you remember, we heard about this story where he had something called an os trigonum. This is what likely leads to that posterior impingement that he's talking about. An os trigonum is an extra little piece of bone that sits behind the talus down in the ankle. There's two common ways that these can happen. Either one is some sort of trauma causes a chip of that talus to break away, or just the way people grow and develop. We have these things called ossification centers where bone forms and ultimately fuses to other bone, but sometimes in the case of these os trigonums, that ossification center doesn't completely fuse with the talus, and so you have a little bone island. Oftentimes it doesn't cause any problems, but sitting in the back of the ankle, whenever you point your foot down and go up on your toes, you're compressing that space in the back of the ankle, which can lead to posterior impingement. Your initial reaction to this news might be anger, it might be confusion, or just complete unknown and shock. We have to remember whenever we see these athletes get injured that these injuries affect their bodies not just when they're on the field or on the court, but when they're at home and when they're with their family. Sometimes the injuries are easy to recover from and things turn out really well, but sometimes players can get stuck in this cycle of just injury rehab, where you're just persistently dealing with chronic pain and feeling crummy to the point where it doesn't even make your daily activities enjoyable. We kind of think of athletes as just these objects that are there for our entertainment and forget that they've got this whole other life around them. While I'm still really surprised that this decision seems to have come after just a couple of weeks of thought, I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to stand up there and say, you know what? I'm just tired of this. I'm tired of my life being so affected from injuries these past 4 years that I just want to live my life without these injuries and without this rehab cycle and this pain. There's still going to be rehab to go through. He still is going to have to get this ankle addressed. He's still going to probably have to do ongoing stuff to keep his shoulder strong, but he at least limits the opportunities and the risk of getting hurt again and just making that life more miserable. So we'll see what the future holds. It honestly wouldn't surprise me at all if after a year or two away from the game, he's totally healed up, he's feeling really well, he maybe shows some interest in coming back, but I think we got to respect the guy for doing something that can be really scary, to step aside from your profession and put your general health above something like that. Thanks as always for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.